Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gauranga. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopijana Malaba Vidivada Dhagati Gopijana Malaba Vidivada Dhagati Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Panachagati Yamuna Tera Manachagati Jai Hurad Humadava Kunjabi Hari Jai Hurad Madhuva Kunda Bihari Gopijana Malaba Kiri Baladhari Gopijana Malaba Kiri Baladhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodananda Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachati Yamuna Tera Vanachati Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatakacharya, also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chananada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anandagoti, Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Param Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shitweda Gadadha, Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavan Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna, Gopa Gopana, Shaim Kunda, Radhakunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturidam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Sambhaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari 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 Go. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, and actually we're continuing our class, and I'm just going to read the verse, and then we'll go on with our explanation. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 20th chapter, verse 39, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. No bugs. Okay, no bugs. Okay, so I'm just going to read this text again real quickly. Shanai Shanai Jahu Pankam Stalayanyamamam Cha Virudha Yataham Amatam Dira Sherira Dishvanat Masu. And the translation is, gradually the different areas of land gave up their muddy condition and the plants grew past their unripe stage in the same way that sober sages give up egotism and possessiveness. These are based on things different from the real self, namely the material body and its byproducts. Okay. So, Om Gana Timananda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. So, this verse, of course, is about anarthas. And just to reiterate, or to go over some of the, I guess I should speak louder, some of the things we were talking about before, I just really have to be specific about what an anartha is. And excuse me if I wasn't specific about what an anartha is. Artha means something you want, the word artha. Sometimes it's taken as meaning money. Like in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. You know, the four Purusharthas. Purushartha means the goals of human beings. That's very interesting. We were talking about this before, a little side note. The word Purusha means male generally. So when we talk about Purushartha, we're just talking about the four goals of human life, material goals. For males, no. We are talking about the four goals of human life, material goals, for males and females. And there was a discussion about this in the class, several days ago. It was actually Monday. We discussed whether when the male term is used in Sanskrit, does it indicate both male and females, only males? So we had an interesting interaction about that. And so I consulted with the foremost Sanskrit expert in the material world. And he said, it's according to the context, which is the same thing as English. You know, like if we say mankind, usually that means womankind too. Of course, nowadays you may say, what, people kind? Humankind, sorry about that. Humankind. And in the Bible, you actually have re-edited the Bible to say he or she or it, just to make sure you cover all your bases. But actually, that's the way the language was used, even in Sanskrit. According to the context, Purusha can mean all people, or it can just mean males. And actually, another point is that none of us are Purushas, even me. Now, that doesn't mean I'm hiding out my actual gender. What that means is that we're all Prakriti in relationship to Krishna. Krishna is the supreme male, and the rest of us are female in relationship to Krishna, ontologically female in relationship to Krishna. That doesn't mean our gender in the spiritual world is female, but it means our nature is female Prakriti. Prakriti, of course, means, it can be taken as meaning female, it can also be taken as meaning energy. So we are all Krishna's energies, or expansions. Mami Vangsa Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. And of course, as we all know, Manaksha Sthani Indriyani, Prakriti Sthani Karshati. We are struggling with the senses, of course. Okay, so let's get back to the point. So there's 4 Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. And of course, there's the Panchama Purushartha. Pancha means 5, which refers to prema, or love of God. So we're interested in that. We should not be interested, perhaps we are, we should not be interested in Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma means like performing religious ceremonies and things like that just for the sake of profit, adoration, distinction, or becoming rich. We shouldn't be interested in Artha. We shouldn't be interested in Kama, even though there's a Vedic literature called what? Kama Sutra. For those who are lusty, they can read that. And certainly we shouldn't be interested in moksha. We've been talking about this in the Nectar Devotion class, how a devotee is not interested in liberation. A devotee is not even interested in the 4 types of Vaishnava liberation. We talked about this in class the other day too. You know, the Sarupya, Samipya, the Salokya, and Sarshti. And I'll tell you what that means. We're not interested or asking Krishna to live on the same planet with him, to associate with him, to have the same opulence as him, or to even look like him. That's interesting. I was actually reading last night before I took rest, because at night I like to read about Krishna's pastimes, about this wonderful demon. His name was Pondraka. Some of you may be familiar with him. And Pondraka, along with his buddy Kashi Raj, they were in Kashi, or Benares. And Pondraka had the gall. It's an interesting word, gall. Comes from the liver. He had the gall to say that he was actually Vishnu, and he challenged Krishna. He said, give up your symbols. And so he actually had all these artificial symbols tied to his body or something like that, a conch and lotus and a club and all these other things. And so Krishna was laughing at this whole thing, so he went to challenge this particular rascal, Pondraka. And Pondraka said, you give all these things up, and Krishna said, okay, I'll give them all up to you, and especially I'll give you my chakra. So he gave him the chakra, and it cut off Pondraka's head. So the reason I'm telling that story is not simply because I'm immersed in that story. The reason I'm telling the story is because Pondraka actually got Sarupya Mukti. Because he had dressed out. Imagine how merciful Krishna is. That even if you're thinking of him out of envy and intensely and thinking, I'd like to have his form, I'd like to have his weapons and symbols, then you can go back to Godhead. That's not bhakti, though. Bhakti is actually favorable. Anyway, so let's get back to the point. So, Purusha, Purusharthas. So, anyway, the point was we were talking about anarthas. Okay? Artha, anartha. And Kunja Bihari asked me the question, are arthas part of the process of devotional service? And I said, no, anarthas are part of the process. Artha means things you want in this world, like a new computer, a Tesla, and things like that. And anartha means things you don't want. Like, what don't you want? You don't want it to be cold out? No, that's not it. You don't want lust. You don't want anger. You don't want greed. You don't want envy. You don't want fear. And of course, in modern society, people, not only do they want these things, but they've developed modern mechanisms for achieving these things. There's a lust pill called Viagra. Don't buy it. There's a lust pill, and anyway, so many things like that. People are so lusty. It's just unbelievable. And, anger, people go to, football games and everything like that just to get angry. And, people are upset now because of COVID. They can't watch all the games that they were supposed to have watched. And, just like, and even the President of the United States bragged, I brought back, basketball or football or something like that as one of his primary accomplishments. Can you imagine that? So, lust, anger, greed, wanting more and more. And then fear. People enjoy fear sometimes. They actually go in these roller coasters or amusement park rides just to scream. Or when I was young, I went in a horror house. Many times my parents would take it. It was fun, like having ghosts and skeletons jump at you. So, and greed, envy. Envy is there, just like so. I remember one time in Miami, Christian Priya would remember this, that there was one young man associated with a young girl. And I think it was Christian Priya happened to just talk to that young man, even though she wasn't so young at that point. I guess she was. So, and then this lady became so upset she went out on the balcony ready to throw herself off the building in the 6th or 7th floor of the building. So, envy, just like what someone else has, whether someone's a better preacher than me. Just so much envy we have. And anyway, so all these are anarthas, things we don't want. Why don't we want them? Well, for several reasons. Because they're interfering with our Krishna consciousness. They're impediments, things that are in our way. And secondly, they're making us disturbed all the time. And if you're lusty, your mind is always disturbed. And if you're angry, your mind is disturbed. If you're anxiety, your mind is disturbed. Like yesterday, because this is a spiritual cause, one of my disciples, unfortunately, was not able to get into the United States. They wouldn't let her in. And I was communicating with immigration, and it was like an anxiety, and I was disturbed and unhappy. Of course, that happens. For Krishna, and I'm still disturbed about it anyway. So it doesn't make me happy. At the same time, I accept that as part of my service to Krishna. Anxiety about, yesterday also we had a GBC meeting. We were informed about a potential lawsuit against the movement that would cost millions of dollars. And so these things don't make you happy. This doesn't make me happy. It's not a child abuse lawsuit, don't worry. It's something completely not so much related. So anyway, so it's just like, but for Krishna, we're willing to accept what would normally be an anartha. This is very interesting. Like we get angry, for example, at people who are blasphemous. I was hearing Prabhupada's class this morning, and Prabhupada was talking to this Mr. Patel. I love these conversations because Prabhupada's really like laying into him or blasting him. And so Mr. Patel is basically saying, with a Mayavad philosophy, everything is Krishna. And Prabhupada is trying to make him understand the philosophy of Achincha Beta Beta Tattva. This one, everything is Krishna. And Prabhupada talked about the body. We have a body. And yes, it's a body. Everything is the body. But there's also a hand like that. And then Prabhupada started actually screaming at him. He said, "You're worse than a child." Because even a child would understand if I point out that's a hand. If I point out that's a head. And I point out that's a foot. And what's the whole thing about? Even a child understands that, and you don't understand it. And his problem is, it was such an interesting exchange that Prabhupada has. So anyway, so the point I'm making is that anger is used in Krishna consciousness. And, and Krishna, of course, says, I am kamo asmi in Bhagavad Gita. What? I am lust according to the principles of religious principles. People have Krishna conscious children. And also, if you're very greedy, I want more and more for Krishna, as Prabhupada said. They could take a picture of him wanting more and more for Krishna. So and fear is also used in Krishna consciousness. Does anyone know how? What are we supposed to be afraid of? Maya. Prabhupada said the problem with you boys and girls, actually there's a lot of boys and girls here now, and old boys and girls. So that's actually more an old boy and girl. So anyway, the problem with you boys and girls, you're not enough afraid of Maya. So practically all these different anarthas can be utilized. They're not anarthas anymore. They're arthas, things that we want in Krishna service. So anyway, but we want to get rid of the anarthas, like material, lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, fear. And so there's a process for getting rid of these anarthas. And of course that process is bhakti. So I'm going to read something that Prabhupada said. Let me see, where is that? And of course that process is chanting the Lord's holy name. But then I'm going to answer a question: is why doesn't the holy name take away these anarthas immediately? So Prabhupada said, this is a quote from the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.13.10, from a class Prabhupada gave. The Hare Krishna mantra chanting means keeping Krishna always within your heart. It is not expensive at all. You haven't got to make a very elevated throne for Krishna. Of course, you should try to do that. You can imagine, in my heart, I have placed now a very diamond throne, and Krishna is sitting. So it probably means externally you don't have to do it, but internally you should do it. That is accepted. It is. Actually, it becomes, even within the mind, you think, I have kept one diamond throne, very costly throne, because Krishna is coming. He will sit down here. That is not false. That is a fact. So you create such a situation within your heart. Now Krishna has seated. Let me wash his feet with the Ganges water, Yamuna water. Now I change his dress to a first-class costly garments. This is meditation, of course. Then I decorate with ornaments. Then I give him for eating. You can simply think of this. This is meditation. Swantastena Gadavarata. It is so a nice thing. Anywhere you can sit down and think that Krishna is sitting in your heart and that you are receiving in such a nice way, they are not false. They are also a fact. It is so easy. So sometimes people question, and here's the answer from Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur from my notes. Why doesn't the holy name get rid of these anarthas immediately? If Krishna is sitting in your heart, you give him a diamond throne. Hey, what's happening, Krishna? Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nityamukto Binatvam Nama Namino. What does that verse mean? That the holy name is completely spiritual, is pure. Nama Chaitanya Krishna Chaitanya, it is the full form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is complete. It is, Shuddha, pure, eternally liberated. So what's happening with the holy name? And Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur answers it very nicely. He says that holy name has the power to purify you immediately. Of course, Krishna has the power to do anything. I mean, just like he did with that Pundraka rascal we just talked about. I wish I had the same mercy as Pundraka. I mean, I don't want to have Sarupya Mukti. So anyway, but he's unhappy with the offenses against it. Therefore, he doesn't completely manifest his power with offenders, which is basically all of us. But still, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur says, we're still protected from Yamaraj, so you don't have to worry about that. So now we have to talk about offenses, especially the first offense on chanting, which is actually the most serious. Of course, many times Prabhupada would say other things like sinning on the strength of chanting is the most serious, but if you analyze all the offenses, the offense that is actually, let's say, destroys your taste for bhakti the most is actually the offense against sadhus. Sadhu ninda, it's called. So anyway, how do you relieve yourself from this sadhu ninda? How do you cure your mentality? And Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur says, first of all, you have to take shelter of that particular sadhu who you've offended. That doesn't mean you take initiation from them. Although in the case of Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, it's very interesting how seriously he took this. Gadadhar Pandit Goswami was brought to see Pundarik Vijayanidhi one time. And Pundarik Vijayanidhi, of course, is Vrishabhanu, Radharani's father. And Gadadhar Pandit Goswami is Radharani, so. But by the influence of Yogamaya, at least Gadadhar Pandit Goswami didn't realize that. And when he saw Pundarik Vijayanidhi, he actually committed some offenses in his mind. Not verbally, not corporally, because there's a difference. Like the corporal offenses are the worst. Verbal offenses are bad. And mental offenses are bad, but not as bad as corporal or verbal. And that was brought out in the story of Brigham Muni's offending Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So anyway, so he thinks in his mind, this guy's just a materialist because he's dressed very nicely. Sometimes we judge a Vaishnava from his external appearance. And of course, that's prohibited. One shouldn't think the Vaishnava is an ordinary person. Namarcha Bhujya Suyeta Sarvadeva Mayo Guru Acharyamam Viganayam Navamanyeta Akarichet Namarcha Bhujya Suyeta Sarvadeva Mayo Guru. So Vaishnava should never be seen. And in fact, it's described, if you see a Vaishnava as an ordinary person, then it's like seeing the deity as stone. And one has hellish intelligence. So anyway, so he was seeing Pundarik Vijayanidhi. And what did he do? Well, after Pundarik Vijayanidhi showed his great devotion by being in ecstasy, he bowed down and asked him for initiation. Of course, that doesn't mean everybody you offend you take initiation from. We'd be in trouble. So, but you bow down to their feet and beg for forgiveness. So Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur says a sadhu or a devotee is any devotee, not only the pure devotees, even if you find a devotee who is ill-behaved, he says, has some remnant of his past habits in this material world. And so you take the dust of his feet, and sometimes if your offense is so serious, then the dust of the feet may not forgive you. And that's sort of a metaphorical statement, that you're actually crying crocodile tears, and you're bowing down, but actually you're not really repentant. Repent and you'll be saved. You're not really repentant. So still, what does it mean, the dust of the feet? To actually take shelter of someone's feet, one has to serve the person. It's not simply begging for forgiveness. One has to serve. And there's stories in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes about this, how they serve. Like Jagai and Madai, actually, they ended up serving the Vaishnavas. They asked for service. Not only were they purified by Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, but they constructed this ghat called the Madai Ghat. If you don't know what a ghat is, it's not a cat. It's a bathing place on the banks of the river. And they used to serve all the Vaishnavas who would come to take a bath there. And so that's how they overcame that offense. And if one thinks by chanting you're going to be forgiven, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur says you're guilty of another offense. So you really have to take the direct method for nullifying the offense against the Vaishnava, which is serving the Vaishnava. And sometimes, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, sometimes the sadhus give causeless mercy and give the offender bhakti. And that's pretty interesting. And the example given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is Jadabharta. Jadabharta was a great devotee, but he was not recognizable as a great devotee. He was basically acting like a stupid idiot so that no one would bother him. You know, sometimes you find devotees acting like that. Of course, hopefully not in the Krishna conscious movement, but anyway, you may find great devotees just being avadutas and just acting so nobody will harass them. And I remember, actually one of my godbrothers, Kusakratha, sometimes acted like an avaduta. And he was such a great devotee, published all these different books and translated all these books. And one of the things I never really appreciated him that much when he was on the planet. He passed away. So we have to be careful. So anyway, so Jadabharta was offended by King Rahugana because Jadabharta was carrying King Rahugana's palanquin, one of the 4 palanquin carriers, and he was jumping to avoid stepping on ants. And the king just chastised him. And Jadabharta, instead of getting angry with him, of course he did correct him. Like Prabhupada said, I was also listening to his class this morning, where Prabhupada said, the guru's business is to chastise disciples. But one thing Prabhupada said was the guru doesn't give instructions to those who are not disciples. It's very interesting. And then Mr. Patel asked Prabhupada, why are you giving me instructions? And Prabhupada said, this is the mercy of the guru. He actually oversteps that particular junction. He gives instructions to everybody. So anyway, so Jadabharata was being chastised by this king, and then finally he instructed the king about the highest aspects of devotional service. And what was his really important instruction? The one I remember the most was Rahuganai tat tapasa niyati nacheja nirvapanad grahadva nachandasa naiva jalagna surya branaha mahatpada rajobhishekam. That no one can become Krishna conscious by engaging themselves in austerities. And he gave a list of different austerities, like immersing yourself in ice in the winter, like the Polar Bear Club, or putting yourself in fire in the middle of the summer, or taking sannyas. It's austerity. Of course, in Kali Yuga, sannyasis get all everything, so it's not an austerity. It's funny. So, funny, true. So, anyway, by immersing yourself, or taking sannyas, or becoming a good grahasta, that's an austerity. So, you can only become Krishna conscious, and he says it in a negative way. So you cannot become Krishna conscious unless you take the dust of the feet of the devotee. So this is actually the secret to becoming Krishna conscious, and also giving up the anarthas. So we mentioned yesterday, of course, anarthas come from different sources, and of course that I consider most seriously as serious the source of offenses against the holy name, and offenses against the Vaishnavas, and offenses against the holy Dham, offenses against the deity. Those are the most serious thing. And, anarthas also come from sinful activities, pious activities, and the byproducts of bhakti, too. So we mentioned those 4 types. So let's talk about the different stages of devotional service. I mean, I could give several classes about this whole thing. And when you can expect these anarthas to go, or specific types of anarthas to go. Okay? And this is from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And let's see, before that I wanted to mention, I guess I'll just start with this. Oh, yeah, actually, this is important. This is based upon the stages of devotional service are actually correlated with different verses in the Shikshashtaka by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And this is from the Bhajana Rahasya by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So when we chant the Shikshashtaka, we can actually think that each one relates to a different stage of devotional service. And these stages, of course, are Shraddha, Sadhusanga, and Artha-Nivritti. We discussed today what an Artha-Nivritti was. All right, Shraddha means faith. just to reiterate some of the things we said before, sadhu sangha means association with devotees, and artha means getting rid of all the garbage, which we mentioned before, lust, anger, greed. Nishta means being steady. Ruchi means having a taste. Krishna Shakti means being very attached to Krishna and detached from the material world. Bhava means experiencing these extreme emotions, and that's a whole other class we'll get to in the Nectar of Devotion. And then there's two other stages, which is Vipralamba Prema. That means separation, which is, Yugaitam Nimishena, separation from Krishna. And then finally there's Prema Bhajana Sambhoga, which is connection with Krishna, which is the last verse of the Shikshashika. So these different verses of the Shikshashika, and you think about this when we recite the Shikshashika today, not only refer to different stages of devotional service, which I can give a whole other class about, but also refer to different times of Krishna's day. Krishna has this Ashta Kaliya Leela, where he does different things at different times of the day. Like first thing, he wakes up in the morning and he's in the Kunja. He's Kunja Bihari, not you. So he's in the Kunja. He's in the Kunja, that means the bushes, with Srimati Radharani, and everyone's trying to wake him up. The parrots are trying to wake him up. Vrinda's really in anxiety because if he doesn't get up and get back home, his mother's going to go into his room and find him gone. The same thing with Radharani. And so they're trying their best to wake him up. And finally they wake them up. To make a long story short, and Krishna is so bewildered that he puts on Radharani's clothes and she puts on his clothes. Anyway, there's a whole other pastimes that occur. This is a little too intimate for Bhagavatam class. So anyway, so each of the verses of the Shikshashika relates to a different time of the day of Krishna, a different stage in devotional service, etc. You have the end of the night, morning, forenoon, midday, afternoon, evening, late evening, and night. It's just wonderful to think of it like that. So, and each of the verses of the Shikshashika also relates to a different pair of words in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Right? Pair of words. Like Hare Krishna, that's one pair. Hare Krishna, another pair. I mean, I wish I had time to go over this whole thing. Like the first this first Hare Krishna is Shraddha, second Hare Krishna is Sadhu Sangha and Anartha Nivritti, and then your Krishna Krishna is the Nishta, and then your Hari Hari is Ruchi, and then Hari Rama is Krishna Shakti, Hari Rama is Bhava, second Hari Rama. And Rama Rama is separation from Krishna, Vipralamba, Prema, and then your final Hari Hari is Prema Bhajana, Sambhoga. And that's the nighttime too. Anyway, so I know it sounds really complicated. And you don't have to think about that. Each time you chant the Maha Mantra, you go crazy. You go, Hare Krishna, morning, Hare Krishna, mid-morning. You can do it. Mother Urmila can do it, but I'm not that advanced. I just try my best to hear the holy names. So just to give you an idea of when these different anarthas from different things go away. The Shraddha is the first platform of devotional service. Shraddha means you have faith, initial faith, like that. That's why you're going to be associated with devotees. And at that stage, your consciousness is absorbed and absolute in just thinking of yourself. And there's a little particle of thinking of Krishna or serving Krishna. And you got all these anarthas still they're like monsters, you like have bad dreams like harassing you all the time. And then the second stage, sadhu sangha, you still, like thinking about yourself. It's described as still absolute. And there's more of a trace of serving Krishna. It just starts to come on to you. But, these offenses, the anarthas, they're still just like, every time you close your eyes, whoops, I still got another few minutes. Every time you close your eyes, they rear up their ugly heads. lust, anger, envy, greed, etc., like that. So then you begin to execute bhajana kriya. Bhajana kriya means, accepting initiation, but you're not so steady in devotional practices. Sometimes you're chanting your japa and you're thinking of Donald Trump while you're chanting japa. Happens. And, you have a lot of this false confidence. Yeah, I'm really devotee. I know what my spiritual identity is. That happens, actually. Sporadic endeavor, you get enthusiastic one day, the next day is blah, you're blah. Indecision, you struggle with your senses. You can't really stick to all your promises and vows. And you keep overeating. And you're just trying to enjoy. Devotional service means I'm a nectar hound. I'm just trying to enjoy the facilities of bhakti. So serving yourself is still pretty full, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and you have a little more desire to serve Krishna. It's called partial. But because you're chanting Hare Krishna, the anarthas from past activities, pious and impious activities, are almost gone. Almost gone. It's pretty good. And your activities, if you're doing it properly, from offenses, are partially gone, and also your anarthas from the byproducts of bhakti, wealth, etc., like that, are partially complete. Okay, and so then you get to the anartha nivritti stage, which is like you're really working on these things, really trying to get rid of the anarthas, and as you're trying to get rid of the anarthas, you come to the steady stage, because you have this goal now. Actually, after you start bhajana kriya, you actually have a goal. You're more focused. And, these anarthas are impeding my spiritual progress. I want to get, just like if you see somebody in this world that's impeding your progress or impeding something you want to accomplish, you want to get rid of those impediments. So then you come to the stage of nishta. And nishta means it's characterized by absence of lethargy or excessive sleep, distraction, by the absence of these things, indifference, bad habits, and absence of taste for material enjoyment. But you still have some mode of passion and ignorance in the background, but they're not really affecting you. They're ineffectual. And you really have an intensity, and it's easy for you to hear and chant like that. So at that particular point, your consciousness is almost gone about serving yourself, and your consciousness of serving Krishna is pervasive. You really want to serve Krishna, and you're completely freed from past. The anarthas come from past activities, and partially, it's said pervasive, from anarthas against offenses, and you're complete. Freed, and not complete is not the end of it, because complete is different than absolute, because you still have that tendency. They may come back, those anarthas or those particular activities that cause the anarthas. Anyway, so then you get to ruchi, and ruchi, of course, is what I mentioned before, two types, depending on quality of favorable elements and environment, and in other words, doesn't depend on favorable environments and elements. And then your consciousness is really almost fully focused on Krishna. And at ruchi, Vishwanath Chakravarti describes, then it's absolute. Your freedom from anarthas that come from wealth. And oh my God, sorry about this. Okay. Anyway, so finally when you get to prema, everything's absolute. In other words, there's no question of them coming back. But in bhava, your anarthas, some of your anarthas, just let me finish this thing. In bhava, your anarthas from past activities and offenses can still come back if you're not careful. And that happened in the case of Bharat Maharaj, who eventually became Jada Bharat later on. So I know there's a lot more to speak about, but we'll have to end this right now. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.